Good evening, good evening, good evening. So I'm 5 minutes early. Can't say I'm late. Oh dear me. So who's ready for some spooky stories? Merry Christmas, everyone. Snow is falling. Good evening, Anne. How are you this fine Monday night? I hope you're well, my sweet lady. I hope you've had a good weekend. Pull me in a little bit closer. Hey, Kelly. Hey, Sheila. Big hugs. Hope everybody's had a great weekend this week. And you've all been busy stocking up for Christmas. Getting those trees ready. Not everybody celebrates Christmas, though. So for those of you that don't celebrate Christmas, sending you big hugs and loves. Hey, Carol. Hoorah, says Yolanda. Hey, Diane. How are you, my lovely? I hope you're well. I hope everybody's had a good weekend this weekend. So, good more ghostly stories. So these stories, I've got quite a few stories to read as well. But these stories are short little ghost stories. Good evening, Jules. Are you surrounded by bubbles? Oh, glad you had a nice birthday, Kelly. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Kelly. Happy belated birthday to you. Oh, that's good, Diane. Glad everything's okay. Hey, Gillian. Glad you're well, my lovely. Quiet one for us, just Ralph and I. Yeah, we've got a busy one this year. First time in a long time. Evening Soldier. We've got kids. Well, got Jordan and husband and 2 grandkids. And I think Mike's is coming home for Christmas dinner as well. So who's ready for some ghostly stories? These are some of them, if not all of them, I think, are from people, real people. Even Judith, well, obviously real people. It's their experiences and what happened. I hope you're well, Judith. Hi again. I know. It doesn't seem like I've been off members for 40. I think it was about 45 minutes. I've been off members. I think I come off about 7:15, didn't I? But it seems like it was a minute ago that I were on there. Who's not wrapped a single present yet? Me. I ain't wrapped any. Got to get them done though, because on Thursday I've got to go and do the drop-offs. Evening, Diane. I'm shocking for. I haven't even bought wrapping paper. I've cheated this year and I've bought them boxes, with lids on. I've bought them because it were like, no, can't be bothered with doing all. I can't bend actually. I can't sit now and wrap presents up. So it's easy to get the boxes. So next year that's what I'm going to do. No, hun, I've had to cut son's hair. Then to find there's no towels in the bathroom cabinet. So I sod it till the shower in the morning. I've been awake since yesterday afternoon and now I can't. Oh, why come you've been awake since yesterday? How come you've not slept? Hope you're right, Jules. So what I'm going to ask for first, if everybody wouldn't mind putting some purple hearts in chat, because I've had a few messages from people that need healing, and yeah, I just want everybody to know that we're all here for them. So if you wouldn't mind putting purple hearts just in the chat, don't matter if it's one or a row of them, whatever you want to do, but just so those out there know that they're not on their own this Christmas and that we're all here to support. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, Diane. Thank you, Soldier. Just so they all know that they're not on their own, and that we're here for them. Thank you, Yolanda. Thank you, everybody. Oh no, you've got it's right weird, this phone. Just while everybody's doing that. Thank you, Jules. Thank you, Kelly. Lindsay, still jet lag. Can you help me when I'm just still jet lagged. Can you help me? Oh, bless you, Dolores. When in my daughter's house in Florida, I was just going to sleep and put something holding me down. It happened twice. I was wide awake. Dolores, if you're still in members, if you go in members earlier on, we did some about protecting his own, protecting his auras. If you have a watch of that, see if there's anything on that that can help. If not, what I'll do is I'll message you afterwards, just to give you some protection to put around you, and see how you go, sweets. But yeah, I'm happy to help. Thank you everybody for the purple hearts. It really means a lot, and it'll mean a lot to those that need the healing sending. So thank you everybody. I'll add something in a bit. So the first story we've got tonight is called The Little Hands. I've never lived in a haunted house, but my mother did as a teen, writes reddit.com user Patent Spacehook, recounting a true event. Other houses in her street had strange things going on too. A few homes away from her lived a family. One night, the daughter went to bed with a bad headache. The next day, she was dead. She'd passed away from an aneurysm. After her funeral, the family went away to get their minds off the tragedy, and the father asked my uncle, my mum's brother, to check on their pets. My mum and dad, who were dating at the time, went with him. My mother had heard there was a grand piano and she wanted to play it. My dad was studying to be a veterinarian. After entering the house, my uncle and my father headed to the basement to see the animals, and my mother went to the piano on the ground floor. She was playing it when she felt something brush her ankles. She thought a cat must have left the basement and walked past her. She kept playing and felt it again. Hey, Tanya, hope you're well, my lovely. She looked under the piano and saw nothing. When she started again, she felt hands clasp her legs tightly. She dashed to the basement door, called my uncle and father, and waited for them. Back outside, my uncle could tell my mum was rattled and asked what's wrong. She told him what happened, and he turned white. He told her the daughter who had died used to play a game with her father. When he played the piano, he crawled underneath, grabbed his ankles, and pushed his feet up and down on the pedals. The Phantom Patient. Evening, Nanny Lane. Thank you, Tanya. Sending love to you across the water, my lovely. So the Phantom Patient. The ambulance company that I used to work for had a haunted ambulance, Rig 12, recounts reddit.com user Zebro. A lot of EMTs had stories about it, but I never put much stock in the paranormal stuff. That is until I had my own experience with Rig 12. My partner and I were working in a rural community at 3 a.m. and it was pitch dark and completely quiet. We were both dozing. I was in the driver's seat and she was in the passenger seat. I woke up to a muffled voice, but I thought my partner was talking. I told her I was trying to sleep and closed my eyes. I distinctly heard a male voice cry, "Oh my God, am I dying?" followed by a few seconds of heavy breathing. My partner and I sat up straight and looked back into the patient compartment, which it sounded like the voice had come from. Things were quiet for a couple of seconds. Then we heard the click of the oxygen bottle regulator and a hiss as if it was leaking. I turned on the lights and we ran out of the rig. I thought a transient might have climbed in to where we were asleep, so we opened the rear doors. No one was there. I checked the oxygen bottles. Neither was opened. We didn't sleep much after that. I don't think I would have either. The Impish Ghost. My neighbour Diane and I had a playful poltergeist for years, and we called it Billy. So begins reddit.com user Abby's Alibi in their real life ghost story. I'd come home and found something put in a weird place: milk in a cupboard, toilet paper in the fridge, laundry detergent in the bathtub. Diane once called to ask if Billy had been around because she couldn't find a gallon of milk. We finally found it outside on the back step, and sugar, darn sugar. Every morning my sugar bowl was empty. When I'd had enough, I would point to Diane's home and yell, "Go see Diane." Within 5 minutes, I'd get a call from her saying, "Thanks a lot." She'd say he's gone and pulled the shenanigans at her place. This occurred for the entire 2 years we lived there. No one believed us, not even our husbands. My mother thought someone was stealing from us when we were sleeping or out of the house. My sister believed something was going on, but didn't know what. I still can't explain any of it. Again, to have an experience like that where things are missing, do you think it's somebody playing about, or do we think it's more on the paranormal kind of feeling? Hey, Sophie, hope you're well, my lovely. The eerie attic. I hate attics. I hate attics and I hate cellars. I always get bad feelings from both. Before Reddit.com user Dig Doors got down to recounting their scariest of ghost stories about living in a place that was obviously teeming with honest-to-goodness members of the spiritual world, they pointed out the irony of ghost stories that began with the phrase, "I don't believe in ghosts, but..." After all, no matter how a ghost story begins, it always hinges on the notion that, come on, of course, we believe in ghosts. A few years ago, I moved into a one-bedroom apartment in Melbourne, Australia. They went on to recall, "It was my first time living on my own. The apartment block had been built in the 1930s. I'd been there a few months when I came home from work one day and went into the bathroom. I saw something strange, a wooden board which had covered a hole in the ceiling that led to the small attic space, lay fractured in two places on the ground. I examined the pieces. The board was an inch thick, and it would have taken Bruce Lee to break it." Bruce Lee. I examined the piece. I thought the landlord had sent someone to work on the attic. I was frozen stiff with fear. Someone is up there for sure, I thought. I emailed pictures to the landlord asking if anyone had been there, with an undertone of annoyance since she hadn't warned me. Her reply read, "Please call me as soon as you are able to." I called and she explained that her last two tenants had had the same thing happen. She promised to replace the board, and she did. A month later, I woke up one night around 4 a.m. My body was covered in goosebumps. It felt like someone was rubbing his or her hands on me. Everything was silent, but then I heard a digging sound coming from above my bed. It was as if someone was pulling a sack of potatoes. I froze, convinced someone was up there. There is no way an animal could make that sound. After 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to turn on the light, armed myself with a cricket bat, and walked to the bathroom. That's when I saw that the new board covering the hole was broken in two. I felt sick. The dragging sound had stopped, but I heard something else whispering. The sound was clear and coming from the attic. It sounded like children's voices, and I could hear one sentence repeat over and over again. "It's your turn. It's your turn." I switched on every light in the apartment to make things feel normal. It was now 5 a.m. Dark outside, and I watched the TV to try and unwind. Then the fuse blew. My pet budgie Dexter, whom I kept in the kitchen, usually never makes a sound at night, but he started squawking like he was being strangled. I'd never heard him make these sorts of noises. He was screaming. I grabbed my car keys, ran out, and sat in my car and waited until the sun came up. When I saw people walking the dogs, this comforted me enough to go back in. The front door was open, but I figured I might have forgotten to close it when I ran out. I went to the kitchen to check on Dexter, and he wasn't in his cage. I felt sick again. All my windows were closed, so I looked everywhere inside. When I walked into the bathroom, I heard splashing. Dexter was half drowned in the toilet. I took him out, washed him, and dried him. I was so confused. At 8 a.m., I called the landlord and gave her a watered-down version of the night. "Oh, wow, you heard the whispering too," she said. I stayed in the apartment for another 18 months. I heard the whispering on a few occasions, and twice the board covering from the hole in the ceiling moved. Although I live elsewhere now, the landlord recently called. She said that her new tenants have begged to speak with me about some of the stuff that's been going on there. Forget it, it's their problem now. The man who lived in the house previously. Yo. Wow. The boy with no eyes. One night when I was 10, I was woken up by my bedroom door opening, followed by someone sitting on the bed. Reddit.com user Kimendo4 recalls of a childhood brush with a very persistent ghost-like apparition. I felt my legs grazed and the bed sink under a person's weight. It's just mum, I thought, and I opened my eyes. It was not my mum. I found an eyeless boy. He had black empty sockets about my age sitting at the foot of my bed. He extended his hand and in it was a little box. I was startled but reached out. He pulled back. I reached again and said, "Give it." Then I blinked, and when I reopened my eyes, he was gone, but I could still see the imprint where he'd been sat on my bed. Fast forward 5 years. My girlfriend came over to do homework. After she'd finished, she took a nap while she waited for her parents. When they arrived, I tried waking her up. She opened her eyes suddenly, looking up at the corner where the wall met the ceiling. She pointed there and went back to sleep. I shook her again. She came to full consciousness, and I explained what she'd done, and she looked haunted. Up on the wall, I saw a little boy with no eyes. He was there in a Spider-Man pose, staring at me. I freaked out and told her my story about the same kid. Fast forward another 5 years. I was with the same girlfriend, and we had a 2-year-old. We were living in my parents' house in my old room. My daughter started waking up at the same time every night, and she'd talk. After a while, I noticed that she'd almost the same conversation every night. I playfully asked her once whom she was talking to, and she said, "It's a little boy. He's nice. He's lost and looking for his mummy." My daughter's nightly conversations continued until we got our own place later that year. I think they're really, do you know, I love these kind of ghost stories. I know they're short, but the short ones I think are even better. Because then I'm not droning on the same story. The Red Lady of Huntingdon College. Here is the story that dates back to 1910, but almost any student at Huntingdon College in Montgomery, Alabama, should recognize it. That's because the events that led up to it are said to have actually happened. As the story goes, in 1910, a young woman was new to the school, was known for her love of the colour red. Sadly, she was also known for being strange and a loner. As the first term got underway, the young woman grew increasingly isolated. Eventually, she took her life by slashing her wrists. Her body was discovered in a red gown drenched in blood. From then on, students and faculty have been reporting sightings of a young woman dressed all in red. She appeared all around the college campus. The figure, dwelling in perpetual isolation, is often cited as a reminder of the importance of being kind to one's peers. Evening, Nita. Hope you're well. Evening, Joyce. Evening, Sophie. Evening, Abraham. I think I've got everybody who's popped in. The Ashley Street Ghost. Huntingdon College is just one of many haunted colleges in America, each with its own ghost story. The next true tale comes from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The haunting happened in 1972 at a party hosted by the University of Michigan students living on Ashley Street. A 15-year-old girl, who probably had no business being there in the first place, suddenly felt a strange bone-chilling cold, according to the Michigan Daily. In an attempt to warm up, she went upstairs because the heat rises, we guess. That's when things really went haywire. One of the walls of the house started moving and a black shadow approached the girl. Meanwhile, downstairs, posters were spontaneously popping off the walls and falling onto a growing pile on the floor. The girl wandered back downstairs, where she found herself saying these strange words. "The drugs and addiction were my fault, and I accept responsibility for that. But I was not always that way. Deep down inside, I want to apologize to everyone involved for what I have done." What made these words even stranger was that the girl did not do drugs, let alone have an addiction. Her words didn't seem strange to the students who lived in the house. Before they moved in, the house had been inhabited by a man with a very serious addiction. The reason he no longer lived there, he had died of a heroin overdose. Has the ghost of Ashley Street made more appearances? That remains a mystery. Evening, Marie. The ghost of Frederick Jordan. The real-life ghost story concerns a man named Frederick Jordan, who held one of the most lonely and desolated jobs in existence. Jordan was the lighthouse keeper for Penfield Reef Lighthouse off the coast of Fairfield, Connecticut. Built in 1874, the lighthouse was I can't even say that word. I do apologize. Dyslexia is popping in. Primarily a way of warning ships of treacherous hidden reef, responsible for more than its fair share of harbour accidents. In 1916, Frederick Jordan was the head lighthouse keeper. Tragically, he drowned in a boating accident just before Christmas in 1916, when he was caught in a gale while rowing home to see his family. Well, do you know, I bet it is a lonely job, that. Evening, midnight, hope you're well, my lovely. Ever since then, lighting and equipment malfunctions in the lighthouse have been blamed on Jordan's spiritual presence. But even more chilling is that keepers of the Penfield Reef Lighthouse often find a lighthouse logbook open to the day Jordan died, and locals have recounted witnessing an unidentifiable figure appearing on the water to help stray boats find their way to safety near the reef. The ghost who came to play. This true ghost story might strike you as a more awe than eek, but only until you consider that we really have no idea what our four-legged friends can sense that we cannot. Can dogs see ghosts? Well, there are plenty of dog experts out there, including veterinarians, who will attest to the fact that there's lots of documentation that could support the notion that dogs can sense paranormal activity. As Jesus Armende, DVM, a senior veterinarian for Chewy, put it. And then there's the fact this story came to Reader's Digest directly from a well-known psychic medium, Kirsty Robinette, who has strong recorded for using her ghost whispering skills to help detectives solve confounding cases. Marlene settled onto the side of the bed and patted Jack's pillow beside her. Robinette told Reader's Digest a year had gone by, but Marlene was still adjusting to widowhood. Maybe it was crazy to think after 40 years of marriage she would ever adjust. Elma, the golden retriever, seemed to understand this from the very first. That cold, moonless night when Marlene returned alone from the hospital, Elma did something he'd never done before. He jumped up onto Jack's side of the bed and lay his head on the pillow. Jack would never have allowed it, Robinette pointed out, but Marlene didn't shoo him off. Instead, she lay beside Elmo and let the peaceful sound of his snoring lull her to sleep. The next night was the same, and the night after that. Over the past year, it had grown into a comforting routine, but not tonight. Tonight was the first time Elma had left Marlene alone in the bed since Jack's passing. But hearing nails clicking on the wooden floor downstairs, Marlene recognised the sound of Elma requesting outsies. With a sigh, Marlene made her way down the stairs to the foyer. But Elma wasn't pacing in front of the big oak door. Rather, he was dancing and wagging and bowing, just like he used to when Jack would come home from work. To Marlene, it felt as if Jack had just come home, and Robinette, who is known for her remarkable intuition about these things, believes that indeed that's what happened. Hey, Julie. The Prince in the Tower. This is the story of two young princes, brothers Edward and Richard, who were imprisoned in the Tower of London to prevent them from becoming king and heir, apparently respectively. In April 1483, when King Edward IV died, the eldest son, Edward V, who was just 12 years old, briefly became king. Because of his young age, he had a regent appointed. That regent was the young king's uncle, known as the Duke of Gloucester. His uncle was known to be deeply resentful that the boys even existed. If it weren't for them, he would have been next in line of succession. What happened next is shrouded in mystery. Indeed, it is one of the strangest British royal family mysteries. It appears that the young king and his brother, Richard, the Duke of York, were kidnapped and locked away in the Tower of London, after which the Duke of Gloucester declared himself King Richard III. The two young princes were never seen or heard from again, and two small skeletons that were eventually found in the tower are believed to be that's all that's left of them, and other ghostly apparitions that are seen. The ghost of the hangman. One theme that many ghost stories have in common is that they offer a sense of justice in return for a wrongful death. This particular ghost story, however, offers a somewhat different take. It's about wrongful treatment in death and revenge in the afterlife. On October the 13th, 1877, Robert Schmale had hanged after a trial that found him guilty of a terrifying and inexplicable murder spree. The townspeople were filled with so much anger and hatred that they left the body hanging for days, as the tale goes. Not one of the townspeople demonstrated even a shred of remorse, let alone forgiveness. Since then, Schmale has been said to haunt the town. Those who have seen him say that he appears as a ghostly male figure, but as soon as the figure registers in your mind, it disappears somewhat maddeningly into the darkness. Wow. Hey, Lisa, hope you're well, my lovely. The Axe Murder House. So these ones now that we're coming to are more known of, I think. So, the Axe Murder House. The Viskila Axe Murder House in, I apologise if I pronounce these wrong, in Visila, I don't know, Lower, is a well-known tourist attraction for ghost hunters and horror lovers alike. The site of the gruesome, unsolved 1912 murder in which 6 children and 2 adults had their skull completely crushed by the axe of an unknown perpetrator was purchased in 1994, restored to its 1912 condition and converted into a tourist destination. It cost $428 a night to stay at the Old Haunted Dome, where visitors always report strange paranormal experiences, such as visions of a man with an axe roaming the halls or faint screams of the children. But in November 2014, the haunting took a darker turn. Robert Stephen Lawson Jr., 37, of Rhinelander, Wisconsin, was on a regular recreational paranormal visit with friends when true horror struck. His companions found him stabbed in the chest, an apparently self-inflicted wound, called 911, and Lawson was brought to a nearby hospital before being helicoptered to Creighton University Medical Center, Omaha. The Montgomery County Sheriff's Office and Lawson suffered the self-inflicted injury in about 12:45 a.m., which is around the same time the 1912 axe murders in the house began. His companion, Lawson recovered from his injuries, but has never spoken publicly about what occurred that day. For Martha Lynn, the owner of the home, the incident was very upsetting. It's publicity, but it's not exactly the kind of publicity you desire to have. I don't want people thinking that when they come to the Vasila Axe Murder House, something's going to happen that's going to make them do something like that. The house remains open for tourist visitors and overnight stays today. The Haunted Doll. When you think of haunted dolls, it's like the creepy old Victorian-looking porcelain kind that spring to mind. None of which you will probably have laying around. You probably have laying around still. Don't get too comfortable around any kids' toys too soon. Though a Disney Frozen Elsa doll was gifted for Christmas in 2013 in the Houston area, made headlines earlier this year when it seemingly became haunted. The doll recited phrases from the movie Frozen and sang "Let It Go" when a button on its necklace was pressed. For 2 years, it did that in English. Mother Emily Madonia said in 2015 it started doing it alternating between Spanish and English. There wasn't a button that changed this. It was just random. The family has owned the doll for more than 6 years and never changed its batteries. The mother says the doll would randomly begin to speak and sing even when it was switched off. The family decided to throw the creepy doll out in December of 2019. Weeks later, they found it inside a bench in their living room. The kids insisted they didn't put it there, and I believed them because they wouldn't have dug through the garbage outside. Madonia told KPRC2 Houston News. At that point, Elsa ceased to sing the English rendition of Let It Go, altogether speaking only Spanish when pressed. The family then double-bagged the bizarre doll and placed it at the bottom of their garbage, which was taken out on garbage day. They went on a trip shortly after, and when they returned, Elsa had come back and was waiting in the backyard of their home. This time, the family mailed Elsa to a family friend in Minnesota, who taped the haunted doll to the front bumper of his truck. It doesn't seem to have made its way back to Houston yet, as per Madonia's latest February's Facebook update on the creepy doll. What a place to stick a doll on front of your bumper. Dude, I wouldn't stick a crumpy. I wouldn't stick a creepy doll on front of my bumper at car. I'd be worried I'd have an accident. A deadly exorcism. Excuse me, I've got a bit of a frog in my throat. Just have a tippy of water. Oh dear. Deadly exorcism. Who believes in exorcism, by the way, before I start this one? Do we have any believers, any non-believers, anybody on fence about the exorcisms? Makes a change from a gear field. Dolls are always creepy. They are midnight. I think they're very creepy. In August 2016 in North London, not sure. I'm saying Marie. An evening to you, my lovely. I'm same on that one. I'm not sure with exorcisms. It's very depends where you're coming from, where you doesn't it? But that's another subject I think we're going to go into more. We'll do a workshop on exorcism and all different cases of exorcism. I think it all depends on the situation. Yeah, China dolls free. I think exorcism could work on a psychological basis. Possibly, possibly. So, in August 2016 in North London, 26-year-old Kennedy's life began Kennedy Ife began acting strange and aggressive following a pain in his throat. He reportedly bit his father, threatened to cut off his own penis, and complained of a python or snake inside of him before his family restrained him to a bed with cable ties and excessive force. God, this has happened in 2016. The BBC reported the family then set about attempting to cure Kennedy, though through restraints and prayers over the next 3 days, the court was told. His brother, Colin Ife, told police, "It's clear that thing was in him. What we believed was a demon because it was not natural. It was clearly trying to kill him," he said. "We had to restrain him for himself. It was clear if we didn't restrain him, he could have tried to harm people in our family." Kennedy Ife had been bound to his bed for 3 days without medical attention when his brother called emergency services, explaining that Kennedy's Ife was complaining of dehydration. He appeared to have developed breathing issues and was pronounced dead at 10:17 a.m. The incident report, while police were at the house, Colin Ife allegedly carried out an attempted resurrection by chanting and praying for Mr. Ife. All 7 of Kennedy Ife's family members were accused of manslaughter, false imprisonment, and causing and allowing the death of a vulnerable adult. A post-mortem examination revealed over 60 wounds, including a possible bite on Kennedy Ife's body, and his father, Kenneth Ife, along with 4 of his brothers, sustained injuries as well. The BBC reported Kenneth Ife told jurors he ordered his sons to take shifts and use overwhelming force, but denied that and association with occults, and secret societies played any part in the death. After a 4-day jury deliberation, all 7 family members were cleared of charges on the March the 14th, 2019. Wow. That's so recent, that one. That's like, wow. I wonder whether that family were for them to do an exorcism, though. I wonder whether they would have been on a spiritual level, or were they a cult? Did they get a cult force? Because normally, if somebody wants an exorcism, you're good at church. It's not something you do on your own, or you go to an exorcist to ask them to come in and do it. So I wonder whether somebody in the family was into that kind of occult kind of lifestyle. I wonder whether they'd done this on other people, maybe. Dead animals in the walls. I do apologise for any animal lovers out there. When the Beretzes family decided to insulate their home in Auburn, Pennsylvania in 2015, they discovered that it had already been with scores of dead animal carcasses. The dead animals were wrapped in newspapers from the 1930s and 40s and were among half-used spices and other items. After removing the items, they sent hundreds of artifacts and carcasses to an expert in Kuhlstown. The expert attributed the rotting animals to their walls to powwow or Dutch magic, a ritual originating in the culture of Venezuelan Dutch to treat ailments and gain physical and spiritual protection. The Pennsylvanian Dutch were a group of German-speaking settlers to Pennsylvania in the 1600s and 1700s and are often of Lutheran, Mennonite, or Amish faiths. The Washington Post notes on the magic. Many of the spells deal with care of livestock, finding water, or the treatment of minor ailments, reflecting the conditions and concerns of early American settlers. But powwow also has within it a tradition of darker spells and even of such things as conjuring demons. One notable ritual in their tradition is this hex to create loyalty in a dog. To attach a dog to a person, providing nothing else was used before to affect it. Try to draw some of your blood and let the dog eat it along with its food, and he will stay with you. The mould round the rotting carcasses in Brevette's home had caused illness among the family members, and they say the odour hasn't gone away. This content is imported from YouTube. You may be able to find the same content in other format, or you may be able to find more information on their website. Florida devil worshipping. Friends noticed that Daniel Hawkins, a 35-year-old school teacher near St. Petersburg, Florida, started acting strangely in June. Oh, this is a different one now. Sorry. So yeah, there may be more I don't want to look at that content. That's not something I'd be interested in. So yes. So right, Florida devil worshipping. I think is it separate, this one, or is it the same? No, it's not. I do apologise. It's part of the same story. So Florida devil worshipping. Friends noticed that Danielle Hawkins, a 35-year-old school teacher near St. Petersburg, Florida, started acting strangely in June of 2012, developing an interest in demonic rituals. Soon after, she was arrested for abuse of 7 of her former students, as the Tampa Bay Times reported. Danielle Hawkins told the kids they needed to rid their bodies of demons as the group gathered before dusk Saturday around a small fire near the St. Petersburg Pier. They should cut their skins to let the evil spirits out. Police said she told the children then they needed to burn the wounds to ensure that spirits would not return. When Hawkins held a lighter to one teen's hand, wind blew the flame out, police said. That prompted her to douse her hand in perfume before setting it on fire. The boy suffered second-degree burns, police said. Oh, it is a different story. I apologise. Another teen was cut on the neck with a broken bottle. Police said Harkins used a flame to heat a small key, which then she used to cauterize the wound. The police were notified because a friend of one of the students who participated in this ritual raised alarms. However, none of the students themselves told their parents about the event or would comment following the arrest of Hawkins for aggravated battery and child abuse. Investigators said they'd spoken to Hawkins, but she didn't spell out what type of religion would require such drastic measures. She hasn't informed us exactly what she was trying to accomplish with this threats of St. Petersburg Police Department said. Wow, that's another. There is, soldier. I don't know what's wrong with these people. Isn't it strange how different cultures interpret some illness meaning different things? It is, Gillian. Very. I've been to a chateau in France about a 300-year-old mummified cat is on show. It was a done thing to wall a live cat for protection. Wow, I didn't know that. Apparently, Egyptians, Tutankhamun suffered epileptic fits, but were deemed as having visions and demons, probably. Isn't it strange how different cult guests? I think I read that into same meanings, different things. Yeah. The death of, is it Elisa?
Elisa Lam.
Elisa Lam. Yeah. Elisa Lam was last seen on January the 31st, 2013, in the lobby of the Cecil Hotel in downtown Los Angeles. She was vacationing through the West Coast, documenting the trip on her blog, and checked in with her parents every day. On January 31st, those calls stopped. Lam had vanished. Soon the police were involved and her parents arrived to help with the search. They had nothing. That February, LAPD released elevator surveillance footage of Lam before her disappearance. The footage shows Lam behaving strangely in the elevator, appearing to talk with invisible people, peering around the corner of the door, crouching in the corner and opening and closing the door. But what exactly is going on in this video? It raises more questions than answers. Theories range from psychotic episodes to demonic possessions to unknown assailants just outside of camera view. This content is imported from YouTube. You may be able to find some content in other formats. You may be able to find more information on their website. Around that time, hotel guests started reporting weird things happening with the Cecil Hotel water supply. The shower was awful, said Sabrina Bro, who spent 8 days there during the investigation. When you turned the tap on, the water was coming black first for 2 seconds and then it was going back to normal. The tap water tasted horrible, Bro said. It had a very funny, sweaty, disgusting taste. It was a very strange taste. I can barely describe it. Can't imagine all those people that were living in there and bodies decaying in water, drinking water, shower water, bath water. But for a week, they never complained. We never thought anything of it, she said. We just thought that was just the way it was here. On the morning of February 19, a hotel employee climbed the roof and used a ladder to investigate the hotel's water storage tanks. That's where authorities found the decomposing naked body of Lam, whose personal items were found nearby. After an autopsy, her death was labelled accidental. NBC Los Angeles reported at the time about the strange circumstances in the hotel's past. The tank had a metal latch that can be opened, but authorities said access to the roof is secured with alarm and lock. The single-room occupancy hotel has had an unusual history. Night stalker Richard Ramirez, who was found guilty of 14 slayings in 1980, lived on the 14th floor for several months in 1985. An international serial killer, Jack Unterweger, is suspected of murdering 3 prostitutes during the time he lived there in 1991. He killed himself in jail in 1994. In 1962, a female occupant jumped out of one of the hotel windows, killing herself and a pedestrian on whom she landed. In February 2021, a Netflix doc called Crime Scene: The Vanishing at the Cecil Hotel explores Alicia's tragic case and the history of the cursed hotel. An exorcism in India Indianapolis. Have I said that right? I do apologise. Last year, the Indianapolis Star published a lengthy report on a family terrorised by 3 children, allegedly possessed by demons. The account of Latoya Ammons and her family tells disturbing stories of children climbing up walls, getting thrown across rooms, and children threatening doctors in deep, unnatural voices. It would seem like something straight out of a movie, a work of fantasy, except all these accounts were more or less corroborated with nearly 800 pages of official records obtained by the Indianapolis Star and recounted in more than a dozen interviews with police, DCS personnel, psychologists, family members, and a Catholic priest. According to Washington's, one of the more chilling sections of this report includes a segment about a possessed 9-year-old. According to Washington's original DCS report, an account collaborated by Walker, the nurse, the 9-year-old, had a weird grin and walked backward up a wall to the ceiling. He then flipped over Campbell, landing on his feet. He never let go of his grandmother's hand. Another segment of the piece reads, the 12-year-old would later tell mental health professionals that she sometimes felt as if she were being choked and held down so she couldn't speak or move. She said she heard a voice say she'd never see her family again and wouldn't live another 20 minutes. Wow. I'm sure I thought it were a little boy, but it could have been a girl. I've seen something on normal telly, something like that, but I'm sure that the house got knocked down, but Zach Baggins went in and he took, I think he bought it, but then he had it knocked down because of apparently the evil in the house. But I might be on, it might be a different case that I'm thinking about. The Utah murder-suicide. In September of 2014, a Utah teen returned to his home to find his parents and 3 siblings dead. In a notebook, a to-do list had been scribbled on the pages. The list looked as if the parents were ready to go on vacation. Items such as feed the pets and find someone to watch after the house were written. The Salt Lake Tribune reported it appeared to be murder-suicide, but there was no suicide note, no prior indication that they would do this, no explanation. Police could not figure out why 2 parents would kill themselves and 3 of their 4 children. For a year, no one knew exactly what happened to the family or what would drive the parents to do something so unthinkable. In January, police released more chilling details in the case. According to accounts from family members and investigation by police, the parents were driven by a belief that the apocalypse was coming, an obsession with a convicted killer at the Washington Post reported. Friends and family told police that the parents were worried about the evil in the world and wanted to escape pending apocalypse, but most assumed they just wanted to move somewhere off the grid. Investigators also found letters written by Kirsty Strack to one of the state's most infamous convicted killers, Dan Lafferty, who was convicted in the 1984 fatal stabbing of his sister-in-law and 1-year-old daughter. According to the trial testimony, he killed the victims at the order of his brother, Ron Lafferty, who claimed to have had a revelation from God. The story became a book called Under the Banner of Heaven. That might be one for his book club to read, Under the Banner of Heaven. Police said Kirsty Strack became friends with Dan Lafferty, and she and her husband even visited him in prison. Wow. So I wonder whether for that one, I don't think with that one there would have been anything unnatural or ghostly about it. I think these have gone more onto just real life encounters. But yeah, a weird start that they go and see a serial killer and then to come back. The phone stalker. In 2007, ABC News documented a series of cell calls to families with terrifying specific death threats. The unidentified caller knew exactly what families were doing and what they were wearing. The families say the calls came in at all hours of the night, threatening to kill their children, their pets, their grandparents. Voicemails arrive, playing recordings of their private conversations, including one with a local police detective. The caller knows the families. The caller knows the families said what they're wearing and what they're doing, and after a month of investigating, police seem powerless to stop them. This went on. This went on with the Kendall family for months, who reported a caller with a scratchy voice threatening to slit their throats. When the Firecrest Wash police tried to find the culprit, the calls were traced back to the Kendall's own phones, even when they were turned off. It got worse. I'm pronouncing this name wrong. The Kaya Kendalls and two other Faircrest families told ABC News that they believe the callers are using their cell phones to spy on them. They say the hackers know their every move, where they are and what they're doing and what they're wearing. The callers have recorded private conversations, the families and police said, including a meeting with a local detective. Conversation families and police said, including a meeting with local detectives. Do you know, technology, though, you have to be careful, don't you? We use phones, we use computers, even with kids on computers, you have to be careful because some of their games that they can download, it's got uses the camera. So you always have to make sure that you are supervising properly when kids are using laptops, camera, anything with a camera on it. The next one is the Watcher. After moving into their 1.3 million dream home, a New Jersey family started receiving creepy death threats from someone who identified themselves as the Watcher. CBS News reported earlier this year. Since moving in, the owners said they had received numerous letters from this mysterious person. The Watcher claimed the home had been the subject of my family for decades, and I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming, Castro reported. The new owners have several children, and other letters asked, have they found out what's in the walls yet? I am pleased to know your names now and the name of the young blood you have brought to me. The family was forced to flee their home and later filed a lawsuit against the previous owners. Wow. So now we're back to some creepy stories. The creepy camping trip. I was camping at a friend's family property with a group of friends. They had a huge creepy shop where we stayed up late drinking by the fire, and I was the last one awake. I went to go pee on the side of the shop and stood about 5 feet away, looking inside through the window. I noticed what looked like a piece of paper floating around. I thought it was a moth at first, but it was moving in very rhythmic figure 8 pattern. Then it quickly floated back to the corner of the shop where it was dark. I sat back down by the fire to finish my beer and have a smoke. No one else was awake, so I played Robot Unicorn Attack 2 on my phone for a while. I noticed my friend Mark pop out of his tent to go pee, then go back in to go to sleep. The next morning we were having breakfast and Mark said, I saw you guys sitting by the fire super late. How late did you stay up? I told him it was probably 2 or 3 a.m. When he asked who was up with me, I told him I was alone. He said, I got up to pee and saw you on your phone and 2 people over your shoulder watching you play. He said one person looked bigger, so he thought he was one of our 4 friends, who was the bigger dude. He said the other person was a taller and skinny, but none of us are noticeably tall or skinny. Ooh. Imagine that. Imagine somebody saying they'd seen you and then, evening, Christine. Imagine somebody seeing you and telling you that there's people looking at you on your shoulder. You just wouldn't know. The Imposter Brother. My brother's bedroom was next to mine growing up. One afternoon, he asked me what I was doing the previous night. That made me laugh so much. Confused, I pressed him for details. He said that at 3 a.m. that night, my laughter woke him up. It sounded like I was pacing the room too. His face went pale when I told him I'd been at a friend's house that night. To this day, he swears blind that it was my laugh. Wonder whether you'll hear my laugh when I pass.
When you're not here.
I think it's just imprinted in John's head. The sweet scented goodbye. My grandmother suffered a major stroke in 2012, resulting in hospice in her home. One night I was sitting at home in my office catching up on some work when all of a sudden the room filled with the scent of perfume. I am not talking about a faint smell. I'm saying it was a very distinctive and strong throughout the entire room. I stopped everything I was doing and said out loud, "Something is wrong. That is Gram." I had not spoken to my family that day, but felt an urgent need to send a text message to my uncle who was staying with her. This was at 11:20 p.m. I got a response right away saying, "Might want to come to say goodbye." Not okay. I quickly rushed over. Without saying anything, I walked straight to my grandmother and kissed her on the forehead, saying, "I love you." She was still warm, but no longer breathing. I told my uncle that I was there because Grandma had brought me there. I asked when she passed, and he replied, saying 5 minutes before I sent my text. That this puts the perfume in my office at nearly the exact same moment. But a lot of people have experienced that, haven't they? That they've had the smell, or they've had like a missed call. Sometimes people say they've had a missed call, and it's from somebody that's passing away at that time. And I think it's remarkable, and very interesting again, because it is on that paranormal level. That how weird is it, you know? The creepy childhood house. The house I grew up in was haunted. Late at night, I would hear someone pacing circles in the living room, but I was the only one awake, and we didn't have pets. I never said anything because I didn't want my family to think I was nuts. Do you know, I think that's the most awkward thing, is saying something to people and being made out that you're crazy for thinking it. Eventually, I moved out and went to college. After I graduated, I was in a rough spot financially. My parents had bought a new house and offered to let me stay in our old one for a while they considered renters. When I said no, my mum asked me why. I finally gave in and told her what I heard. My mum froze and turned to look at me. Turns out she had also heard it for years and didn't say anything for the same reason. Do you know, that is really, I'd say that one to me resonates, because we hear that with ETA family members coming in and talking about their experiences, and I think that'll resonate with a lot of us. Scent of lingering person is quite common. It does. Welcome back, Midnight. My brother is the said my mum visited him just before I called him to tell him she died. Yep. So many things. They're very, I find them comforting, but I also find them a bit freaky. The vanishing miner. When I was 14, my friend and I rode mountain bikes way out in the woods. We must have been 2 miles from any house and decided to turn back and go home for the day. Walking up the hill we'd just ridden down, we saw this old guy with miner clothes from the 1800s carrying a bucket. He was walking up the hill with his back towards us, but only for a few seconds before he disappeared. We were both silent until I said, "I thought I saw something." He did too, and perfectly described the guy. We got out of there very quickly. This was in northern Arizona, where they used to mine gold. About a mile away, there's an old miner's cabin. So I think, again, for that, we've caught spirits, whether they're in the doing what they were doing when they were living, or whether it's because we've just caught them walking through the camera. But for me, with this gentleman, it's like those monks that we saw. The monks were going back, they were reliving that moment. Maybe that miner were reliving his moments too. The tale of lost time. When I was 7 or 8, I was at my grandmother's house for Christmas and played hide and seek with some of my cousins. Most of us were staying the night, but for some reason, no one ever stayed in the 4th bedroom. It was around 8 p.m. and my turn to count, so I went into the 4th room to do so. I sat on the bed, closed my eyes, and counted to 20. When I opened my eyes, it was light out. I closed my eyes at night, counted to 20, and somehow 12 hours had passed. I'd like to know more about that one, I think. Of course, the immediate thought was that maybe I just fell asleep. I'll refute that with 3 points. First, why didn't my cousins come get me when I failed to seek them out? Second, it was cold in that house. We would sleep multiple people to a bed under several blankets, at least one of which was usually electric. I can't imagine sleeping through the night in that kind of cold without some kind of covering. And third, there's no way my parents wouldn't have bothered to come find me before they went to sleep. And when they did find me, they wouldn't have left me there, especially without a blanket. I can't tell you what happened. Maybe I had some sort of strange memory lapse that just happened to begin and end in the same location. Maybe the simulation lagged. Maybe I really did skip 12 hours. All I can say for sure is something happened that night and I've never been able to explain it. Well, how old did she say she was? She didn't give an age. So they were playing with the cousins at the grandma's house. So I would say maybe early teens. Could have been younger. But we'll go for teens. So you've got teens playing hide and seek. If we'd gone somewhere and my kids are playing, if I've not seen them in an hour, I'd be like, where have they gone? Are they upstairs or they ain't got? And you'd go and check on them. So for nobody to go and check on this person for 12 hours and for her to wake up in the same spot where she's gone, I wish she'd have put what happened when she went out the room. Was it like the next day? There's no what happened after. So that'd be interesting to see if we can find any more about that one. You hear of time lapses of UFO abductions too. You do, yo. You do. There's a lot. But yeah, I think for that one, we need to know what happened when she came out of the room and what was said to her by other family members. The scary blue lady. When I was like 3 or 4, my mom said I used to talk to something or someone in the corner of my room. I would sit down and hold a conversation for hours. Mom would ask me who I was talking to. Then one day I said, Grandpa. I then mentioned something very, very specific about him. I think it was his moustache and something about a joke he used to tell. There was no way for me to know any of this because he died 3 years earlier and I hadn't been told stuff about him, nor had I seen pictures. The picture side, I don't know, because I think people have family pictures around, but I've had a personal experience with my girls, with Jordan and Ashley when they were little. When they were born, they were only Michael I didn't do it with, but when Jordan and Ashley were born, I took them to the cemetery to meet my dad as soon as we come out of hospital, like on way home from hospital. Took them to meet my dad then, and I laid him down on the grave on the grass, in blankets. And they got to an age where, I mean, both Jordan and Ashley were very forward. Jordan, you could have a conversation with when she was 1 year old. And they used to sit on bed and they'd talk to my dad. And when it was my mom that said to Jordan, who you talking to? And Jordan says, I'm talking to my granddad. At that point, my mom doesn't have any photos of my dad in the house because obviously she lost him. He passed away, so she doesn't have the photos. I have the photo, but my photos are always in cabinets, not where kids could see. And some of the things Jordan and Ashley used to say really freaked my mom out. And my mom turned around and said that she weren't having them anymore overnight because they were scaring her to death, because the conversations they was having with this gentleman, they never called him granddad, they never said the word granddad, but they used to walk in and we showed him a picture, and Jordan and Ashley both said, that's the master that sits on our bed and talks to us. I found that really got goosebumps now. I found that, for me, it was very comforting. I was annoyed because I couldn't seem to talk to him and didn't come to me, but I found the whole thing very very, very comforting for me. Number 9, this grandma's secret diary. When my mum retired, she got very into family history. At some point, she obtained the diary of my dad's mother, Nan. Nan was an intensely private person and never wanted anyone knowing her business. One night, my dad was away, so my mother sat down to read the diary. It started raining, nothing unusual since they lived on the coast. She got up and closed a few windows before going back to the diary. The rain turned into a storm, so she got up to shut the windows in the other room too, before returning to her reading. Suddenly, the intercom to her right turned on. They lived in a house originally built by an electrician, so every room had one. Every intercom in the house was on. When she went to turn the others off, she noticed all the pictures on the walls were askew, all at similar angles and not random. Meanwhile, the storm worsened. As she stood there taking it all in, an intense gust of wind rattled the windows from one end of the house to the other, as if a speeding train went past on the balcony outside. She walked calmly upstairs, shut the diary, put it in the cupboard, and said, "Sorry, Nan," to the empty room. The storm died down, she fixed all the pictures, and that's it. Here's the kicker. Someone from her work lived in the same street. When she saw him the next day, she mentioned the storm. The guy looked at her funny and asked what storm she was talking about. He had dinner on the balcony that night, and there hadn't been a storm at any point. That's interesting. The life-saving premonition. Several years ago, I had a reoccurring dream about burning alive in a hotel. It was so realistic, I could feel the pain and hear the screams. Each dream would be more and more detailed. In my last one, I could have even make out the exact details of the building. When my family went on vacation, we stopped in a small city and looked for a place to stay. We stopped at the exact hotel in my dreams. I just froze and repeatedly asked if we could go somewhere else. After continuously pestering my parents about it, we went to a different hotel. It burned down that night. We were supposed to stay there and it killed 14 people. Wow. Hey, Gems. You hear a lot of people saying that as well, don't they? They go to a place, whether they've dreamed about it, but for whatever reason you turn up somewhere and you've just got something just says to you, go stay somewhere else or go visit somewhere else, and you do, and then something happens, like, I don't know, not to that extent, but something will happen and it's like, oh my God, if we'd have gone there, that could have been us, we could have been, again, I find that very, that gut feeling that we get, I just think it's extraordinary. The creepy conversation. When I was a kid, I lived with just my mom. Every few nights after she went to bed and turned off the TV, I'd hear a man and woman casually having a quiet conversation in our kitchen. I always had to concentrate really hard to make sure I was actually hearing something because it was so faint I couldn't make out the words. This continued for years. I thought my mom wouldn't believe me if I told her. After we moved out, I finally mentioned it, and she said she'd always experienced the same thing. Sometimes it's nice to mention it while it's happening, but again, it goes back to that fear. It goes back to, am I going to be believed or am I going to be laughed at? And it's such a horrible thing, the paranormal field, for that. If you've got people that are interested in it, you get a really positive, and people are intrigued by what you're saying and want to know more. But if you say it to somebody that's got no interest, they'll laugh at you. But for me, I think they laugh because they're more scared of the paranormal. Their perception of the paranormal is something to fear, whereas though we all know that there's nothing to fear. It's so strange. This baby's best friend. Back in 2001, my wife and I were watching the first ever episode of The Amazing Race while my son played on the floor. I thought that my mom, who passed away a year prior, would have loved this. As soon as I had that thought, a cold chill ran up through my body. At the same time, my wife said, "This is something you and your mom would have done and probably won." Right then, my son, who was about a year and a half old, started waving at the ceiling, saying bye-bye. He often talked to the ceiling, so we started asking who was there and what they were saying, just kind of playing along with his game. He wasn't saying real words yet, but we wanted to encourage talking. When I asked him, the closest I can spell out what sounded like was Anel or annual. A few Anel Annual. A few months later, I was laying on the floor looking through a photo album. My son came walking over, saying hi and laughing. I said hi back, but he wasn't talking to me. He started chatting with a picture in the album and was waving and talking to it. It was my mum's graduation picture from nursing school. He had first met my mum when he was 6 months old, and only a couple of times between then and when she passed. I asked if he knew who that was, and he put his finger right in the middle of the picture and said, Anjul, Anjul. He knew what angels were. Is that what he was saying? I don't know. Anjul, Anjul. Anyul. Wow. The Haunted Hotel. My brother was working as a night porter at an old hotel from the 18th century in the northern English countryside. One night, a woman came down to reception as white as a sheet, saying she couldn't sleep and didn't want to stay there. When my brother inquired as to why, she said she could hear children laughing all night and that a child had entered her room with a candle, stood at the foot of her bed and wouldn't leave. My brother mentioned it to the manager the following morning and was told that it was a regular occurrence. Before it was a hotel, over 100 years ago, it was a school. Wow. I wish it'd tell me the name of hotel. The inexplicable bathroom encounter. I had just started a new job in a really old building. I had to stay a bit later than I normally would, and by the time I was packed up to leave, my floor was pretty empty. I needed to use the restroom, and as I approached the door, I saw someone else open it and go in. I remember vividly that they were wearing a pink shirt and khakis, because that's what I was wearing too. I was also mildly annoyed because I don't like being in the bathroom when someone else is in there, so I was going for a poop. After deciding I still definitely needed to pee before the commute home, I went in. The bathroom was completely empty. I don't know how to describe the energy in the room, but it was very tense, completely silent. I remember being able to hear my heartbeat. After standing completely frozen for what felt like 10 minutes, it was probably like 15 seconds, I turned right around and left. I had nightmares about the bathroom for weeks. So maybe an energy went in, a disgruntled energy, and it had left that like disgruntled energy, which caused the gentleman to pick it up on his energy because his weren't protected. And that takes us back to, as members, what we did in members tonight. The unexpected house guest. I was house sitting for my biological mum and stepdad back in June and was on a video call with my best friend. I was the only one living person in the house, but my best friend said that there was a woman standing behind me in the kitchen while I was sitting on the couch with the laptop on my lap. So again, there's a few of these that do come up where people are talking and they can see something behind them, and yet they're on their own. I think I'd poop myself if I were on phone. If I were on phone to somebody and they said to me, if I were on a video call and they said to me, Lindsay, who's that bloke behind you, or who's that woman behind you? I'd be like, and I were on my own, I'd absolutely shit myself. I'd be like, come and get me. I wouldn't really, but it would still unnerve me, even though I'd be like, oh, who's come to visit? Yeah, I think I definitely unnerved me because you wouldn't be expecting it. It's not something that you'd be. If you're out on a paranormal investigation, you expect that to see something, but when you sat at home, you don't expect it to happen around you if you're not wanting it to, if that makes sense. The ghostly game of Ding Dong Ditch. I've heard of Ding Dong Witch, but not Ding Dong Ditch. I used to work night shifts in group homes. One night I was watching TV in the living room after all the residents had fallen asleep. Around 3 a.m, the doorbell started ringing like someone was frantically pushing it. I answered, but no one was there. The entryway was very hard to ding dong. The entryway was very hard to ding dong ditch. The walkway to the front door is a 20 to 30 foot corridor with a 12-foot brick wall on either side, so you'd have to run back the entire length and duck around the corner. I still figured I was being pranked by one or more mischievous residents though, so I checked on them. They were all fast asleep. As soon as I finished shutting the last resident's door, the doorbell started frantically ringing again. Still nobody. This time I was determined to catch them. So I turned off all the lights and hid right behind the door. After 20 minutes, the doorbell started going insane again. So I jumped out and turned the walkway lights on, but nobody was there. I opened the door thinking maybe they were hiding to the side of the door like I was. After seeing nobody there, my stomach dropped and I got a feeling of dread. I slowly started closing the door, but when it was almost closed all the way, the doorbell started going nuts again and stayed that way for at least 15 minutes. I just shit myself. It was almost as if whatever it was took great pleasure in mocking and taunting me. I locked the door and ran my ass back to the couch, turning on all the lights I could. Another disturbing thing about this, it seemed to read my mind. Whenever I got the urge to go outside and smoke, it would start with the doorbell again. It's like it didn't want me to forget it's there and that it was a threat. Wow. The vacation visitor. Me and my family went on holiday to Indonesia in 2019, and I had to share a room with my sister. The first morning, she mentioned that in the night she'd seen someone walk across our room and stare out the window. She even heard the floorboards creak as they moved. My sister gets sleep paralysis pretty regular, so we shrugged it off. 2 days later, I woke up in the middle of the night to see someone sat at the end of my bed, hands cupping their faces as they cried. I thought it was my sister, and after she was okay, I froze as I realised I could see my sister tucked up in her bed out of the corner of my eye. The figure, which was like a living silhouette, was clearly female, with long hair tied back in a ponytail. I just kind of slowly laid back down, took out my phone, and started watching YouTube videos. I know that sounds stupid, but I figured that there wasn't much else I could do. Every now and then I'd look up and see the figure still there, and then went back to watching my videos. This lasted about half an hour until I looked up and the woman was just gone. How interesting. Hey, Antoinette. Very interesting, very strange stories. Some of them, I think they're awesome, and I like reading. Some of these were like personal experiences involved. I can smell Mum's perfume. Yeah, I think a lot do, don't they? Yeah, I think. I mean, as far as going on YouTube, that could be how somebody would. Oh, thank you, Antoinette. That could be how somebody would react. If you saw something, would you put something on your phone to take your mind off what you were seeing? Would you video it? Would you have got your camera out and like, I'm videoing this? Or would you have been scared to video in case whatever energy were there turned round and looked at you? You know, hey, Penny. What experience did you have the night after the visit? Did your dogs react again? Well, I'll tell you. After we'd investigated Yolanda's house, the spirit of Yolanda and Rob's fur babies come through. That night, Yolanda went to bed, and Yolanda's in bed, and Rob's on his computer in the other room, and Rob was still up as Yolanda went to bed. Now, I know Charlie. Charlie it splits between them both, but Charlie will stay with Rob. He'll follow Rob because he knows Rob's up late, so he'll follow Rob. This particular night, after we'd gone home, Yolanda gets into bed and she felt something jump on the bed and lay near her feet. But because she wasn't comfy, she like moved her legs and went, "Get down, Charlie," or "Move, Charlie," or something. She never thought nothing of it. She then laid back down, and again, tell me if I'm right, Yolanda, I don't know if I'm explaining it right. She felt something again move. So she like looked up as if to like say, "Charlie, stop it," because they were like, oh, that way they were scratching. Charlie was scratching at her feet, and she told him off once, and then he did it again, and he was scratching her feet. So she's like looked up to look down to tell him off, and Charlie's not even on bed. She shouted Rob and said to Rob, as Charlie just come out, and Rob said, "No, Charlie's been with me all night." So that night, Yolanda felt something jump on her bed and start scratching at her feet. Now, Yolanda's previous dogs that her and Rob shared, would have done that. It was a trait of theirs to get up and do that, especially if Yolanda weren't feeling very well. They'd get up and yeah. So for Yolanda, it was a very, very personal experience. To actually have that, to actually feel the bounce of something getting up on the bed. So it was as though when the dog jumped, it literally felt like Charlie had jumped on bed. And yeah, I mean, the comfort it brought, it shocked her. At first, she was like, oh my God, because of what had happened. And it took her about a minute or so to actually reflect on what had just happened. And then once, because when anything happens like that, it's all right. People say, no, yeah, I just sat up and I was talking and I was doing this. You don't. You're literally going to a freak mode because it's like, oh my God, what's just gone up, do you know? Because your brain can't process it. So after a minute or so, Yolanda's brain started processing, right, Charlie's in there, Lindsay and John's been, the dog's energies have come, oh my God. And then it clicked. And the comfort it brought to Yolanda and Rob was absolutely amazing. And for me, it was the end to the perfect night. It really was. It was just so amazing. And when Yolanda said, because she weren't going to tell me, because again, she didn't want to say it in case I were like, oh, don't be silly, it'll have been such and such. But I wouldn't do that, you know. To me, I've had these personal experiences, so I know when somebody else is telling me, you're not just gonna, you're gonna say it because it's not something you're gonna make up. Do you know what I mean? And for Yolanda, I was just so pleased because I know Rob's dog come through, and none of Yo-Yo's did, but Rob's dog Kay, we're only calling him Kay because the names didn't come out, so we left it at the K. But the K came through, and the K flashed the ball. When Yolanda says, John said, I'll rope balls. So Yolanda said, we're going to rope ball. And if Kay's here, can you pick it up? And the ball started going off. So it were really good, weren't it, when we were there? So yeah, so for Yo-Yo to have that experience afterwards, that were her fur baby coming up and cuddling her. But yeah, very personal and very touching. I was so comforted. Yeah, I mean, that would just, it's just brilliant. It would just closure for Yolanda to know that even though as fur babies go over that rainbow bridge, our fur babies can still come back and bring comfort. So for me, I think it's just fantastic. I think it's marvelous. So yeah, we will be going back to Yo-Yo's at some point, probably after Christmas in New Year, and seeing if we can communicate with the little boy's energy that was there. Because I think it was more the little boy's energy, weren't it, that were there, that were a little bit shy around us. So we will be going back and trying to communicate with the child's energy. I was putting hand cream on at night when my left hand was all riddled with that, but my right hand was normal. I put mine under the cover. Time I look at it, it was my mum's hand, which I wear rings on that hand. Wow. But you know, it were Penny. It was such a fantastic result. Oh, you're welcome, Yo-Yo. I think I just thought it might be easier me saying it than you typing it. I feel that all the time when I was sticking my in bed, when I'm in between sleep and consciousness. Yeah, you know, I mean, for some people, you could be wide awake when it could happen. I mean, Yolanda were wide-eyed. We're not wide awake, but she was laid in bed awake. She just closed her eyes. So she weren't really asleep or awake, if you know what I mean. But yeah, I just think for me, any personal experience you have, don't let somebody else take that away from you. You know what you felt, you know what you saw, you know what was happening at that time, and it's very easy for other people to come in and go, no, it will window open, it with this and that open, when you know full fact you were in a room with no windows open, or the drink of pop was on that table, there's only you in house, you've gone out and now your cup's in a different position. Do you know? And to me, it's more loved ones trying to come in to get your attention. It's somebody's energy that knows you. 9 out of 10 times, I'm going to say it's energies that know us, and they are just coming in and they're trying to get the attention. So if ever you're experiencing something and you're unsure what it can be, if you've been thinking of a loved one lately who's in spirit, and then you start noticing little things happening, or not being there when you've put them down, or I don't know, you're tapping on your window when you go to bed, or something, or like that story said, a doorbell ringing, anything. For me, if you're thinking of a loved one or a few loved ones, that's their way of letting you know that they're around you, they're acknowledging what you're saying, and they're listening to you. But that's my take on it anyway. And I know there's going to be millions and other people's takes on it. And again, it's what brings me comfort, knowing that and thinking that is what gives me peace of mind. Again, everybody's to their own. You believe it's your own personal belief, isn't it? So yeah, but my way is always the positive way, no negative Nellies. So yeah, it's more positive. Past, I was working with severe toothache, went downstairs, but when I went back to bed, I felt someone wrap their arms around me. I was scared because of the unknown. Exactly, yeah. You're going to be, if I were laid in bed, even though we go out paranormal hunting and do things paranormal, if me and John, if I were laid in bed and John weren't in bed and I felt somebody's arms come around me, I'd be absolutely, I'd be scared to death. Because again, your brain's not in that moment to be watching. It's like if you're watching, say like you're watching a parrot, say we're live and you're watching us live, and we see a shadow figure run across screen. It doesn't scare anybody. You're just like, oh my God, did you see that? Because you in that moment, your mindset is within that paranormal that you're watching. Now, if you were at home and you saw that in your bedroom, you'd shit yourself because your brain's not processing that. You're not working with it paranormal at that point. So everybody would get scared. Everybody would scared. If you're out on a paranormal investigation, there's nothing to get scared of because you're actually asking for that. You're asking for energies to come and show, you know. It might make you go, you know, but might make me scream. But like I said, you know, it breaks down. But I think it's just different in the mindset of where you are. But you believe that too, Nee? Oh, yeah, I do. I believe that if we think about our loved ones enough, they'll come down and they'll move things, or something will happen that they're trying to give us that thing. Yeah. So, but yeah, it's so different. But I'd still shit myself if one showed you. Yeah, but you saw, yeah, in house you would, yeah. But when you're watching soldier, like when you're watching on YouTube and you caught them shadows at months, you didn't shit yourself then. You were more in like awe of like, oh my God, what have we just captured? Do you know? It's such a, it's that different again. Like I say, it's that different mindset. So yeah. So anyway, guys, I am going to jump off. I've been on an hour and a half. We've been on members. I bloody did. Oh, bless you. I feel when I'm in trouble, definitely my mum comes. Definitely Penny. Definitely. Whether it's as simple as a penny from heaven. If it's a feather, it could be. It could even be, I don't know, something as daft as a pen. You know, a pen that you've not found, that you've been looking for months, and then all of a sudden it's suddenly on the floor near your feet, and you're like, where's that come from? That's a sign from your mom and everybody. So yeah, take it all. And again, don't let anybody take away your own personal experiences. Even if they're not into it, they should still respect what you're saying. If they don't, just don't talk. Don't give them anything else to rip you with, if that makes sense. So take care, everybody. Sweet dreams. Thank you so much for joining. Thank you for the purple hearts at the beginning. All that love and healing will be passed on to somebody special that I know of, and also to everybody else who's on their own and is in need of a little bit of healing. So thank you everybody for the purple hearts that you shared. It really does mean a lot to us. And we shall see you tomorrow, or I shall see you tomorrow, depending on what John's doing. So it's Chit Chat Tuesday, isn't it, tomorrow? So yeah, we'll both be on tomorrow for Chit Chat Tuesday. But I think it's just going to be Chit Chat Tuesday. Because next Tuesday we've got special guests on next Tuesday. It's going to be amazing. We've got Lana joining us, and Paul Goddard as well. And Lana is a psychic artist, so she's going to be talking about her work, and lots of things are going to be talked about. It's going to be brilliant. So have a great night, and we shall have a great night, a great day wherever you are, sending love across the water and sending love to the whole world. So we shall see you tomorrow night. Take care, everybody. Mwah. Much love. Bye, guys. Bye. I can't end the broadcast. I've lost me Twizzler.
Click it. Turn it off.
Oh, what am I doing? IP vanish.